Thank you for tuning in to J.C. Matthews Ministries. We are committed to teaching the concepts, laws, and principles of God's kingdom, empowering you to discover your true identity and purpose in life. Grab your Bible and pad as you join the message.
If you're joining us, we're going to continue in our series entitled Understanding the Assault on the Image of God. Understanding the Assault on the Image of God. Now, this is part 2. So if you missed part 1, you want to reflect on that, because we are going to be assuming that we won't have to go over or double back to cover what we covered in the first lesson. There are some things said that I think are foundational to our understanding of the issue. But we want to move forward into a direction where we can start to uncover and expose a unseen but very real agenda that is part of a lot of what we're seeing today. And unless we have a level of discernment, it would be very difficult for us to separate the origin of something and individuals. And I mentioned that in our last teaching. So if you would turn to Genesis chapter 1, verse number 26 through 28, I'm going to read from the King James Version of the Bible. You may have a different translation, but I assure you that the spirit of the word is the same. So starting at verse number 6, and God said, let us make man in our image, after or according to, depending on your translation, our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, subdue it and have dominion. Now, I mentioned in our last message that within those three verses, verses 26 through 28, we have the solution, we have clarity, and we have finality to a lot of the issues that we are facing today. On the surface level, it seems as if it doesn't really address much of what we're seeing today. But if you were to allow yourself to hear the Spirit of God and to dig a little deeper, the Bible says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of a king or kings to search that matter out. And we are called kings and priests. So our understanding is not that of simple laity or the general public concerning the Word of God. We recognize that there are things that have to be searched out, that are there, that are available, but must be searched out. Right. And so what we find in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26 through 28 is God clarifying for us what it is that he intends for man to be. Now, I mentioned in our last lesson that what we find in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28, we find a declaration of purpose, and we see the actual creation or the bringing into being of mankind, of a certain kind of man. And God said that this kind of man has two, what we want to call genders, male and female. The reason why I call those genders is because the man has not received his biological body yet, which science now is telling us there's a difference between sex and gender. They're saying that sex is what you are biologically born into. You know, we determine that you are a male or a female in the sense, or a man or a wombed man, if we want to use correct terminology, a man having the necessary parts to engage in activities to reproduce, the woman being a womb man to receive what's necessary, that the seed to produce a body. Those are biological functions. I'm trying to show that there's a biological element to our person. But the first thing that God mentions is God that God says concerning these that they're male and female. Those are genders.
Right.
He doesn't leave it open. He doesn't just allow us to fill in between this part and that part, and then in between there's all of these variations. He says there was male and female.
Right.
Then what we see in Genesis chapter 2 is God gives them their natural or natal or physical bodies.
Yes.
And in Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, God formed the man from the dust of the ground, giving him his body. That was the first male man.
Right.
M-A-L-E M-A-N.
Right.
Then we find that God said that he needs a helpmeet, and he creates a wombed man. This is what Adam called her. God had given him the responsibility of naming the creation. Adam says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. You shall be called a wombed man. Now watch this, not female. Because that you can't see a female.
All right. All right.
You can't see a female. That's a gender.
Right.
Yes.
God created two genders for two sexes.
Right.
Yes.
The male man received a masculine spirit
Indeed. All right. Indeed.
to correspond to his natural state. The female received a female spirit in the wombed man.
Yes, sir.
Right. Right.
Yes, sir.
And so those questions, in the sense of what we're struggling with today, have already been answered.
That's right. That's right.
We have a record. Watch this. God made it so from the very beginning.
Yes.
You ain't got to dig in the Bible to find this. All you got to do is open it up.
That's
Right.
right.
And the things we are debating today are already there.
Right.
Yes.
In the first case,
Indeed.
Right.
you ain't got to read a chapter.
Right.
And we got the answers to the things that we're struggling with today.
Yes, sir.
Right.
The reason why this is important is because what we are seeing today is what I'm going to call a blindness.
Yes. Yes.
It's a blindness.
Yes.
Right.
And the blindness is purposeful. It's specific.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's not that we lose our ability to reason.
All right.
It's not that we lose our ability to discern in the sense of to see things, like we lost eyesight. That's not the case. There is a willingness, a spirit,
Yes.
Say that.
a spirit of willingness to reject
Yes.
the things that God has established,
That's right.
Yes.
and to establish
That's right.
as realities things that have no foundation in reality.
That's right.
They are subjective.
That's right.
Right. Right.
And when you do that, the problem is that there becomes disorder.
Yes.
People don't like that. People don't like that word anymore. Order.
Right.
You know, we somehow have caused order to become an enemy.
All right.
Come
We see enemy. We see the order as a limitation or an obstruction upon our ability to be free.
That's
All
right.
right.
That's
All
right.
But freedom without order is chaos.
Yes,
That's
it
right.
is.
Come on.
That's right.
It's
Indeed.
chaos.
Come on.
Indeed.
And the reason why we have to recognize that this is spiritual, because there's a spirit of chaos.
Yes.
There's an enemy whose character, nature,
Yes.
is that, and what we're seeing today is his nature being expressed
That's right.
Yes.
through what we're calling rights, we're calling movements, we're calling these things agendas, and all of them. If you look at them closely, like I said, you have to be spiritually discerning enough
That's right.
to recognize there's a common thread
That's right. That's right. That's
that
right.
goes through all of these. It's the unraveling of order.
That's
Right.
right.
It is the doing away or the erasure of objective truth.
That's
Yes.
right.
That's right.
That's right.
Notice most of these agendas that we have today, if you point to the root cause of what they are complaining about, they don't want to talk about it.
That's right.
That's right. Come on.
Say that.
Yeah.
Come on.
Indeed.
I'm not trying to be controversial.
Of course.
I want to be clear.
Indeed.
Right.
I want to clarify some things, because if you talk about an issue but you don't address the issue, you're not talking about the issue.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
That's
You-
right.
Yes, sir.
You're just having a conversation or disagreement,
Yes,
Right.
sir.
and seeing how one can outwit the other.
Yes.
What we want is solutions.
Yes.
Yes.
So watch this. So when we talk about AIDS and HIV, we're talking about the issue. How do we bring this to an end? The conclusion is stop having promiscuous relationships and sex with other people.
That's
Yes.
right. Indeed.
That's
That's
right.
Indeed.
That's
Indeed.
right.
It will stop.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
How do we eliminate poverty in the African American community? One, we have to address the family.
Right.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yes.
See, we don't want to talk. We don't
Yes.
want to talk. We don't want to talk about that.
That's right.
How do we better the case for the African American children? Make sure that they got two parents,
Indeed.
Yes.
That's right.
Indeed.
That's right.
because people have. Statistically,
Yes.
if there's a father in the home
Yes.
That's right.
and the father and the mother are married,
Yes.
they are 80% more likely not to go to jail.
Indeed.
80%.
Yes.
Is that a solution?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
But we won't address that dynamic.
All right.
We won't say, black man, don't lay down and have children with that black woman unless she's your wife.
That's
Indeed.
right.
We won't say, woman, don't engage in marital type relationships and allow a man to have marital privileges without the marriage certificate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And you'll see a lot of the things in our community just
Yes.
Yep.
simple. That don't cost no money.
Right.
All it costs is submission to the Bible.
Yes.
Submission to
Say
the word.
that.
Yes.
Don't cost no money.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Yes.
You could just go on and on and on. We have today, and I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to move more directly into our lesson. But what I'm trying to show you, that there's a blindness that is intentional.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
The reason why these things are such a problem is because we're not handling the issues.
That's right.
Take for instance, Black Lives Matter. That's been so politicized that I think the real meaning of the word Black Lives Matter and separated from the movement
Right.
has lost its meaning.
That's
Right.
right. Indeed.
But we have to be careful, because the people that are saying Black Lives Matter kill more black people than the people that we're pointing to, that we're saying Black Lives Matter to.
All
Right. Right.
Preach.
That's confusing.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
That when in a weekend 60-something people can be shot
Yes.
and 30-something people killed
Yes.
in one city,
Yes.
Say that. Say that.
and we don't say nothing about it.
Indeed.
Nothing.
Indeed.
But let something happen way across the country
Yes.
where somebody who is of a different complexion does the exact same thing,
Yes.
and we want to shut and burn down the whole place.
Right.
Indeed.
What I'm trying to say is, I'm not advocating one way or the other. What I'm saying is something's wrong.
Indeed.
Yes. Yes.
That's right.
Something is missing.
Indeed.
That's right.
That if we don't want to address the issue, then we should not have the conversation,
That's
Indeed.
right.
Indeed.
because the conversation produces conflict.
Yes.
Right.
If there's no solution that is being sought, all we're going to do is fight.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
So I had to bring those very sensitive topics forward to show you that there's something out there that's causing conflict that doesn't want a solution.
That's
Right.
right. That is
Because
right.
what I wanted to show you is that the solution's real easy.
Yes,
it's
it is.
it's on the first chapter
Yes.
of the Bible. You don't kill people. Why? Because the Bible says He created in the image and likeness of God.
Yes.
It doesn't talk about what color the person is. It said that that person is created in the image and likeness of God.
That's
Right.
right.
So how do we handle these things? Because we have to, as the church, we've been given that assignment in the world to be light.
Yes.
So these things are happening in darkness. People are unsure, unaware, unable to see properly because they're being blinded. So the church has been given the responsibility that in these dark places to be light,
Yes.
to provide clarity, direction,
Yes.
to be the guide, the people who have eyes that are able to see, that know the will of God, who operate not from a personal motivation, but for the love of God
Yes.
for mankind,
Yes.
being God's hands, being God's mouthpiece,
Right.
being an expression of Christ who died for all mankind.
That's right. That's right.
Come on.
We've been given that assignment. But the problem is that we have become so, as Jesus warned us not to be, we're supposed to be in the world but not of the world.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Yes.
So we have church political parties.
Indeed.
All right.
Yes, indeed.
We have churches that are politically aligned.
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Yes,
right.
indeed.
And so if the Democrats say this, then this segment of the body will be doing this.
That's right.
Right.
And then if the Republicans say this, we have another segment of the body who almost unanimously are doing that.
Right.
And so we are in the fray, if you will, with the rest of the world.
Right.
And we have turned off our lights because the word is no longer the guide.
All right.
And we swinging and fighting in that darkness with the rest of the world, proclaiming that we're not of it.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And this is something that we have to recognize, that there is a calling that we have
Yes.
Sir.
that is different and distinctive,
Yes.
that requires us to be in it but not of it.
Yes,
Right.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Come on.
We're in the situations like everybody else, but we're not governed by them.
That's right.
Yes.
Amen.
Say that.
Where our outcomes are not determined by them.
Yes.
Our positions are not a result of our being part of them.
Right.
We have to have a different perspective. So ultimately, the church has to recognize something, and this is why I talk about the assault on the image of God, is that all of these agendas, movement, ideologies are a result of a attempt to erase something that is foundational to the order and purpose that God established the earth and mankind for, and that is the image of God. So there's a significance to the image of God, or the Imago Dei, as it's sometimes called, that most people, even within the church, are unaware of, that is essential for the preservation of God's order and the ability of man to fulfill their purposes in the earth. As a result, they do not recognize the seriousness and the threat that many of the most recent agendas and ideologies pose, and what their ultimate objectives are.
All right.
All of these are not just spontaneous
That's right.
or unrelated, arrivals on the political scene.
That's right.
These have an ultimate spiritual objective.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
Ultimate spiritual objective. It can only be understood spiritually because it's spiritual
That's
Right.
right.
and transcends social or financial, racial, gender, political, party, or status. But it is a subtle and strategic and sinister plan of dehumanization and subjectification of identity,
Yes.
Indeed.
to remove all vestiges of God's image and thereby his presence and the reminder of his right to rule the earth.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Did you hear what I just
Yes,
said?
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Now, the problem that we have, remember I said this earlier, the problem that we have is separating the origin from the individual.
Right.
Because the enemy, the church has to be discerning.
Yes.
The enemy will present to you a person
Right.
that either has authority, is respectable, or is vulnerable, a victim, and needs protection.
All right. All right.
And he will use whatever leaning gives him the most traction.
Yes.
Right.
And so what we find is, and God has given me to this to expose this strategy because I see it too often.
Yes.
There is a sinister and diabolical agenda
That's right.
that is currently being held in track, held in check by some order,
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Yes.
some revelation
Right.
that resembles God's will.
Right.
It can't on its own present itself as it is, or it will be rejected
That's
Yes.
right.
because it is
That's
too
right.
obvious and ugly,
That's
Right.
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 and people would recognize it for what it is.
Yes.
So it has to find a way to break out. And once it is out, it has to now find a way to become acceptable.
Indeed.
Right.
Indeed.
And so what will happen oftentimes is that somebody will do something to someone of that group
Yes, sir.
Yes.
that is
Yes,
wrong.
sir. Yes,
Uh-huh.
sir.
And they will take that individual incident
Yes.
and magnify it as the general mode of operation
That's right.
towards that group.
That's
Right.
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 Yes, sir.
And now the general public seeing this outrageous act of disrespect and violence responds emotionally
That's right. That's right.
to it
That's right.
and decree that kind of person needs specific or special
right.
treatment
That's
or
right.
or protections
Expose it.
so that this exception doesn't continue to happen. Well,
That's right.
that we have to keep this in mind. It was an exception,
It was
Indeed.
an exception.
That's right.
but it will be projected as the general mode of operation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. You're right.
Now, it has found a way now around the restraints
That's right.
of its true character and nature.
Yes.
Right.
It has now found legitimacy, a place where its voice can now be heard.
Yes.
Come
Yes,
on.
yes.
It can tell its story,
Yes.
Right.
but it's not going to tell you all of what is involved
That's
in it,
right. That's
Right.
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 That's right.
and what are the fruits of it.
Yes.
I told you last time we saw where those who participate in these lifestyles are 8 and sometimes 10 to 15 times more likely to abuse drugs, commit suicide, have some form of addiction,
Yes.
have psychological issues.
Yes.
Right.
Those things are not brought along with the conversation.
That's right.
That's right.
It's left in the back
Yes,
Right.
sir.
while the victimization is brought forward
That's
Yes.
right. That's right.
and presented as the status quo, as the
Yes.
way things are.
Right. Right.
And people will emotionally respond to it and yield certain rights, certain places
That's right.
to it
That's right.
for the purpose of not wanting to appear to be part of the perpetrators
Indeed.
or in line with the ones who perpetrated the wrong act.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so they recognize and they continue to take a step forward,
Right.
continue to take a step forward,
Yeah.
continue to take a step forward until they're up front.
Yes.
And now they have the ability to look back and say, well, if you disagree, you're with them.
See that?
You have to, what I'm trying to say is that we have to be discerning
Yes.
of
Indeed.
the enemy's
Yes.
tactics.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. Indeed.
Listen, I got Bible for you. When the person who tried to keep Jesus from going from the cross was someone who previously and has shown that he would draw a sword and fight for him.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Somebody close to him,
Yes.
Peter.
That's
Say
right.
that.
But what did Jesus say? Jesus says, I see you,
Yes.
the individual.
Right.
Yes.
But there's an origin behind what you're
Yes.
saying.
That's it,
Right.
Pastor.
Come on.
Yes.
That's it.
And Jesus didn't call him Peter. He called him just what it was.
That's
The devil,
yes.
Satan.
Right.
Yes.
All right. We got one example there. Let's look at another somebody that is advocating what apparently seems a righteous cause.
All right.
Judas.
Yes.
Yes.
The lady came and pour the oil out on Jesus' feet. And Judas said, what a waste. Watch this. This could have been given to the poor. See, most people who have a problem with giving to the church ain't concerned about
That's right.
the poor. Because the first thing that they will say is, they would say, that could have went to the poor. Well, I've heard that before. It's in the scripture. It's a man named Judas.
Right. Right.
And the Bible says he had no concern for the poor.
right.
He was a thief and was taken from the bag.
Yes.
Come on.
Indeed.
Come on.
So his expression of care for the poor was a pretense,
Indeed.
Right.
Yes.
because something was being done to honor God.
Yes.
And you see the same thing today.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
When people tithe, they all of a sudden the people who are not tithers
All right. Say that.
start screaming, "You don't have to do that."
All right.
And this could have been done for that, and this could have been done for that. But when you check their record
Say
Right.
that.
of them giving, what you find is pretty much a zero.
Right. Right.
So your pretense of the care for the church and for the needy is nullified by the fact that you haven't contributed anything towards the care.
Right.
Right.
Of the what I'm trying to say is that we have to be discerning, because the Bible gives us examples of something being said or presented, and it's not it is not what you see.
Yes,
Right.
indeed.
It is not what you hear.
Yes.
Right.
Indeed.
Yes. Yes.
And we have to be conscious of this,
Right.
because much of what we will hear coming forward, listen to what I'm saying,
Yes.
much of what we're going to be dealing with going forward will be deception.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yes.
It will appear to be one thing,
Yes.
Yes.
but it is something wholly opposite.
That's
Yes.
right.
That's right.
And so the same type of discernment has to be had when we're talking about these different ideologies that are coming forward and agendas, because their ultimate, listen to what I'm saying, their ultimate objective is the removal, the retardation, and ultimate elimination of the image of God in the earth. Because I told you this before, the image of God
Sir.
does not simply mean to look like.
Yes, indeed.
It is legally, you have to legally understand the concept of image that the Bible's given us. It is a representation of God in the earth. We saw that the word for image was teslium. It's an Old Testament word that is primarily used for idols. And in the kingdom context, kings used to use idols or images of themselves, place it at the borders and within their kingdom, to remind people you are in the presence of the king and under his jurisdiction. I mentioned this earlier, that we go to kingdoms. We go to the kingdom of Dubai and we go to the kingdom of Abu Dhabi to conduct certain activities. And when we go there, one of the things that we recognize is everywhere within the kingdom we see the king's image.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Everywhere. Gas station, hotel, supermarket, malls, just drive on buildings. You to the natural eye, you would think this is a vain man. No, the man is practicing a principle
Indeed.
Yes. Yes.
Come on.
that when you see, I don't care where you came from.
Yes.
I don't care who you think you are.
Yes.
When I want you to know that when you come into my kingdom or my jurisdiction,
Yes.
when you see my image, I'm reminding you that I'm the one in charge.
Indeed.
Come on.
That's right.
Come on.
You can't do what you want to do
Right.
here.
Right.
Right. Say
Right.
that.
Right.
I don't care if you were allowed to walk around naked in your country. You are in this kingdom.
That's
Right.
right.
Yes. Yes.
You will dress a certain way.
Right.
You will not do certain things. You will not litter. You will not steal.
Right.
That's right.
Yes.
Come on.
Indeed.
One of our hosts told us, I said, what? I said, I was looking at how orderly everything was in this kingdom. Orderly.
Right.
I said, what would happen if you leave your laptop or your wallet at the bus station? He said, it'll be there when you get back. Because in that kingdom, the law is if you steal, you're about to lose something
Yes.
permanently.
Yes.
Permanently. There you go.
So the images that you see are not for vanity.
That's
Yes.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
It's a legal purpose.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
It is reminding those who might need to be reminded
All right.
that you're not in charge
Right.
of what goes on here.
Yes.
Come on.
The one whose image you see is. Now watch this. God created us in his image and likeness.
Yes.
So God's sons were to carry around something that reminded the rest of creation that when they saw you,
Yes.
that it was under the jurisdiction of somebody that we represent.
Yes.
Right.
Indeed.
Right.
That he's already established order.
Yes.
He's already established these things
Yes.
that we're fighting about.
Right.
The problem, the reason why we can have debates and conversations about them right now is because we have set aside the image.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Mm.
Yes, sir.
The image or the representation have stopped being a representative of God.
Yes,
Right.
Say
sir.
that.
Right.
We have failed to fulfill the assignment of reminding the world.
Yes. Yes, yes.
See, God is a spirit, so the image, you can't say we look like him in the sense that we anatomically may represent what we understand how God functions. There's a head. The Bible talks about the head, the hands, and those sorts of things, the nose and the eyes. Those are representations of certain aspects of God and how he operates. And we've been created in such a way that we reflect it, but we are not him.
Indeed.
But at the same time, we've been created in such a way that even though we can't see God and seeing us, we should be reminded of him.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
This is why Paul can say in Romans, he says, listen, he said, if they say that they don't believe in God, they recognize his handiwork,
Huh.
and they can't deny that there is a God
Indeed.
Right.
by what he's created.
Right.
But this is important. When you're talking about the image is the representation of God and his right to rule legally. Now, what I want to do is I want to do something real quick because I do want to get to a part where I believe the crux of the matter lies. Therefore, the image is a representation, a reminder of the king and his jurisdiction wherever the image is found. In other words, God's image is a living testimony. We testify. Those who are operating God's image and likeness, we are a testimony of God.
Yes.
You know the word, I am a living testimony?
Yes.
I would sing it for you, but I don't have enough time. But we testify. There's something being said to creation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And to those that come into contact with the Son of God, that communicates to whatever it is, whether it be conforming or non-conforming, that there's an order
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
that God has established. And so that is the testimony that we have. So Satan's attack upon the image of God is for the dehumanization and the devolving of the image.
Yes. Yes.
I want to show you. I want to show you in Scripture on why we have such a problem with the issues of image today. Most of the problem, as I said before, on a micro level and on a macro level, the problems we have today are primarily an identity crisis.
Yes. Yes. Right.
That's right.
Most people's psychological problems are a result of trying to find purpose and identity.
Right. That's right.
Most of the agendas that we're dealing with today deal with what? Identity.
Yeah.
That's right.
We have issues with the family. That's an identity issue.
Yes.
Yes.
And the problem is that the reason why we're having to have these conversations is because we've set aside God's word as a result, as it relates to identity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So now we got to figure these things out in the dark.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
And we're coming up with all types of propositions and hypotheses to try to acquire answers to something that is plainly stated.
Yes.
Plainly. Yes.
So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28, what do we read over and over? God made man in our image and after his likeness. And he said, let them have dominion. So we recognize that the image is the first principal and primary provision for us to have dominion.
Right.
In God's order. It's the first and primary provision. So the first thing that the enemy attacked is
All right.
the image.
Indeed. Yes.
If you can remove the foundation stone, the whole house is coming down.
There
Indeed.
you go.
Indeed.
And so he says, I don't want to dismantle this place brick by brick. All I got to do is remove one, and the whole house is in jeopardy. So in Genesis chapter 3, we see this. So in Genesis chapter 1, we saw God created man in his image and after his likeness. We saw in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, he says God created man in the image of God, created him, male and female, he created them. So he's emphasizing the image. Verse number, Genesis 3, verses 1 through 7. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, why? We may eat of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes will be open. Here it is, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So the issue was he was challenging the image.
Yes.
Right. Come on.
He suggested to her that she was not something that God had said that she was.
All right. All right.
See, this is how this is how enemy takes from us and causes us to lose things that he could not take himself.
Right.
He has to get us to entertain ideas,
Yes.
certain imaginations
Yes.
Right.
that are contrary to what God has already plainly said.
Yes.
And because we are not established in the word, what he is saying is so similar to what the truth said that we take it as truth.
Right.
All right.
Watch the spiritual dynamics of this conversation, because we have to be careful. Eve added a word
That's right.
into something
Mm-hmm.
that God said,
Right.
and Satan removed a word that God has said.
Mm-hmm.
Watch this. God didn't say you couldn't touch the tree.
Right.
And Satan removed from the conversation, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. In the sense that he's saying, if you do this, you will be like.
Right.
God had already said, let us make them in our image and after our likeness. It's already done.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
And so what we see is just a single word.
Right.
Just a small focusing on one aspect of a truth.
Right.
And then twisting it so that it now becomes
That's right.
untrue. And if you're not discerning enough of that tactic, you will receive much of what is being said today as being legitimate.
That's
Right.
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 All right.
Because now, when you turn it from the Word of God, it is no longer the Word of God.
That's
Right.
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 Come on.
That's right.
You are now operating by something outside of the will of God.
Yes.
Right.
But it sounds good.
Yes.
It sounds right.
Yes.
So this is where we see the challenge to the image in Genesis chapter 3. Now, in Genesis chapter 5, verse number 1 through 3, we're told that now the image has been lost. And whenever the image is lost, man now uses his imagination to try to supply what the image provided.
Right.
So something happened to the image. Genesis chapter 5, verse number 1 through 3. This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, blessed them and called them mankind, or Adam, in the day they were created. Verse number 3. And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness after his image, and named himself. So now we don't have men being created after the image and likeness. Now, the reason why the likeness of God, The reason why I point that out is because remember, we discovered what the purpose of the image was. The image was supposed to be a representation
Right.
of the presence and the right of God to rule.
Yes.
God's image. Now we have an image that is of a fallen man. Not God's right to rule, but now one that is a reflection of a fallen man.
Right.
Once the image of God, what I want to show you is once man started to be created after Adam's image instead of God's image, we start to hear talk about his imagination.
All right.
Right.
Because when verse number 6, Genesis chapter 6, verse number 5 says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of heart was continually evil. Genesis 8 verses 21 part B says this, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. So after man started being created in the image of Adam, not the image of God, man's imagination became a problem.
Right.
Because man's imagination started to produce a creation of man that didn't reflect God. Physically, men look the same.
Right.
But from an image standpoint, he began to imagine himself to be things that were not true.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
Right.
Let me
Word.
let me bring it in today's terms. We have a situation like I said, this is something that I want you to have your eyes open so that you can see the blindness that is taking place.
Yes. Yes.
Again, we're going to talk about issues that nobody wants to talk about, but we need to expose the spirit behind this.
Yes.
Right.
I want you to pay attention to this principle. This principle. You hear what I'm saying? This principle. I feel like, and I truly believe that I'm a millionaire. I believe that.
Yes.
Matter of fact, I do everything I can, dressing wise and everything else, to try to communicate to the general public what I believe personally. Now I'm going to go out into society and demand that the general public and the economic world respond to me the way that I believe that I am.
All right.
But I believe sincerely that I was created to be rich and that I am a millionaire.
Right.
What's going to happen when I go into an auto dealership or bank and request to either withdraw money or buy something? They are going to want me to prove it
Right.
Right.
with something that they can appreciate,
Right.
Right.
that is real,
Yes.
Right.
to validate what I'm saying.
Right.
Right.
Or else the conclusion is you are not a millionaire.
Right.
Right.
No, wait a minute, but I believe this, so I need for you to treat me as if I am. Listen to the principle.
Right.
Now, we have something that's taking place today
That's right.
where a man can say that I'm a woman. Put on a wig, put on makeup, put on a dress up like it, and then demand that you legitimize it as so.
Right.
But the truth is that he is not.
That's right.
That's right.
Although he has given the presentation, when it comes down to the ability to prove it,
Come on.
it's not there.
It's
Yes,
not there.
indeed.
When and again, I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about principle.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Because when you are dealing with things that don't make natural sense,
That's right.
Right.
you are dealing with a spirit.
Yes.
Indeed.
Come on
Indeed,
now.
Yes.
Pastor.
You're dealing with a spirit.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That when what you see you are being told to ignore,
Yes.
you know that you are dealing with something you can't see.
That's
There
right.
you go.
That's
There
right.
you go.
That's right.
There you go.
Did you hear what I just said?
Indeed.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Word.
so we should not be confused
Yes, that's right. That's right.
when we see these types of things.
That's right.
Mm.
Ooh, yes.
Come on.
All we need to do is recognize that we're not dealing with people.
Right.
This is why you can love the person.
Yes.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right.
I love. There's no hate in my heart for anybody that's transsexual,
Indeed.
Right.
homosexual,
That's right.
a binary, whatever they call, whatever designation they have. I don't hate that person.
That's
Right.
right.
That person needs help.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
That's right.
Listen, that person needs God's best.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yes. That's
Yes.
This is the position the church has to take. We want God's best for you. I'm not going to preach to you. I'm going to desire God's best for you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And once the person discerns that you love them, they'll listen to you.
Right.
Yes.
So watch this. So we see that there's something that is taking place that is even suggesting the submission of order. Even the objective order, we understand that it's spiritual. And whenever it becomes subjective and is not based on objective order, error can be introduced.
Yes.
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 Falsehoods
Yes.
that can be debated, and whoever has the best argument, whether both sides are wrong,
Right.
it becomes the truth. See, the problem with God's order is it always tells the truth.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
Always.
Indeed.
Always.
Yes, indeed.
It always tells the truth.
Yes.
Remember, I said that we were designed as God's image to testify.
Yes.
Listen, creation always testifies to the truth, even when the creature itself lies.
That's right.
That's right.
Come on. Come on.
This is why I said, listen, you could take that man who says he's a woman, and I'll even properly pronoun them as they say. You could take her and put her, say 100 years later, somebody digs up her.
Right.
He has no theological leanings.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
He has scientific training to discern whether or not something's male or female.
Yes.
Come on.
He will not call her a her. He will call her a him.
Yes.
That's right.
That's right.
Why? God's creation is going to testify. This was a man.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't care what you called her.
Yes.
Right.
God's creation is still going to be knocking.
Indeed.
That's right.
Say that.
That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie.
Yes,
Right.
indeed.
God's creation
Yes.
Come on.
always tells the truth. A man can tell a police officer, "I ain't had nothing to drink." The police officer knows some things. The creation is going to tell the truth.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Blow your breath into this instrument.
Right.
Your mouth will tell on you.
Right.
Your molecules will tell on you. Listen,
Right.
the same word. Listen, there'll be words coming out of your mouth saying, "I haven't drunk," and your breath will be saying, "You're lying. You're lying. You're lying."
Right.
That's good.
God's creation don't lie.
Right.
That's all crime scene investigation is.
Indeed.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Crime scene investigation says we didn't catch the person, but we know the earth is going to tell the truth.
Come on.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
It's going to tell us the truth.
Yes.
So, we got a footprint here, and it's going in that direction. So we need to focus our attention that direction.
Right. Right.
Don't let the person leave behind some hair follicles or some blood or nail clippings or they take the person's that deceased and they look underneath his nails and he scratched the person.
Yep.
They ain't got to find the person.
Right.
That's right.
The nail clip, what's underneath the nails, that part of creation that was left behind will tell you, oh, this was an African American, or this was a Hispanic, or this was a white person, this was a male, this was a female.
Right.
Yes.
Where are they getting that information from?
Yes.
Creation telling on them.
Yes.
Yes.
They can even find the body and tell you how approximately to almost the hour when it happened.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
What are they doing? Paying attention to creation.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I said it happened then.
Undeniable.
The coroner said, well, the body decayed and such and such. I said, no, that couldn't happen here.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
You lying.
Undeniable.
Both of us were, I wasn't there, but the body's telling me that
Yes.
that you're lying.
Yes, indeed.
Listen to what I'm saying is God has created his order that way.
Yes,
God
yes.
God has created his creation that way.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
So when we find something that is saying otherwise, we know it's a lie.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And when it's telling you to ignore those things and it's not natural, when it's saying don't pay attention to the natural, we know that it's spiritual.
There you go.
Therefore, we have to handle it spiritually.
Yes.
Now, I wanted to point that out because when we start talking about these type of things, it's an attack on God,
It is.
on his image.
It
Yes.
is.
Yes.
See, I don't take it personal. I'm just a messenger.
Right.
But I know when I hear these things, and no matter how empathetic I might be with the situation that happened, I have to be discerning enough to have a holy indignation
Yes.
spiritually about, nah, you're not gonna defy my God. You're not gonna defile his name. You're not gonna defile his image.
Right.
I empathize with your situation,
Right.
but the spirit behind your situation is diabolical. It is
Yes.
attacking
It is.
the
Right.
image of my God.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
The reason why I know that, we talked about these different situations. Now watch this. In the Medical News Today article of May 11th, 2021 of this year. Now watch this. It says, for centuries, many societies have enforced the notion that a person is either a man or a woman. The notion that we are either man or woman based on their physical characteristics. That what you see, what's objectively seen. This idea conflates sex and gender, which is incorrect. Watch this. Watch this. Sex and gender are not the same. Now, in general terms, sex refers to a person's physical characteristics at birth, and gender encompasses a person's, watch this, and I agree with him here, a person's identities, plural. A person, singular, identities. Yes, I agree. There's some spirits there.
Yes.
Say that.
Yes.
There's something
Say
there.
that.
Yes.
Do you know that in this article they talk about in other places, they talk about how people prefer to be referred to as they.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
I agree with you.
Yes.
You ain't the only one there.
That's right.
That's right.
That's demonic.
Yes,
Yeah.
Listen,
indeed.
in the natural realm, we might not recognize that. We might just say that's the person's preference. Well, why would you want to be considered plural?
Right.
That's right.
There's some other personality there.
Indeed.
Right.
This, the definition says it. It encompasses a person's
Yes.
personalities,
Yes.
identities, expressions, and social roles. Now, what this suggests is, and it goes on and it says, a person may identify with a gender that is different from their natal sex or with no gender at all. The latter identify often referred to as non-binary, but this is an umbrella term that covers many identifications.
Right.
Now, the reason why I say that's an attack on God, because watch what the scripture says about this. Isaiah 45:9 says, woe to the one who quarrels with his maker. A piece of pottery among the other earthen vessels or pieces of pottery. Will the clay say to the potter, what are you doing?
All right.
Or the thing you are making say, he has no hands. The New Living Translation says this, what sorrow awaits those who argue with their creator? Does a clay pot argue with its maker? Does the clay dispute with the one who shapes it, saying, stop, you are doing it wrong? Does the pot exclaim, how clumsy can you be? Romans 9:20, the NASB says, on the contrary, who are you, you foolish person, who answers back to God? The thing molded will not say to the molder, why did you make me like this? Will it? Psalms 103 says this, know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who has made us and not we ourselves.
Yes.
So when somebody says, this is why I say it's an attack on the image of God. When somebody says, I'm not what I appear to be, or what I appear to be was wrong, they are including or they are accusing God
That's
Yes.
right.
That's
That is
right.
right.
of making a mistake.
That's
That's
right.
right.
That's right.
And the scripture says, who are you,
Yes,
That's
indeed.
right.
the clay,
Yes,
to say
right.
to the maker, why are you making me this way? What are you doing?
That's right.
This is why they have to do away with the image of God.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Because if there's a maker and you are what is made, then there's a hierarchy of authority.
Right.
Indeed.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
Indeed.
If you can do away with the concept of a maker
Yes.
and somehow assume that you can be what you decide that you will be,
Right.
then what happens is now that you now have, as the text, as that article said, a plethora of personalities,
Yes.
identities
Yes.
Right.
that you could assume.
Yes.
There are people who are demanding that they be considered a pet.
That's right.
Do you know that? There's actually articles. I forget where the guy was from, and the guy says, "I am a canine." He walks around on all fours, has a collar and everything. He eats out of bowls. His bed is shaped like a doghouse. This is real. So we listen. We laugh at him, but if we follow the principle
Right.
Right.
that we are whatever we say that we are, how do we distinguish it? He's crazy, but this person who looks and anatomically is a certain thing. He's not.
All right.
But he can say, well, I'm not anatomically or look like a canine, but I am.
Right.
How do we separate what is truth or fiction? Both of them are, if it's not founded in the Word of God.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Now, the reason why I wanted to point that out is this: is that when we're talking about the image of God, we have to recognize that the enemy has a vested interest in destroying it,
That's right.
obscuring it,
Right.
so that you don't see it.
Right.
That's right.
And the key between the image of God and the authority that the church has in understanding the responsibility we have in the world is Christ.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Remember, he said that greater works you will do because I go unto the Father.
Yes.
He endowed them with the ability to do what he did. And but the Bible tells us some things about him that is key to us understanding why we have to take the same position
Yes.
in protecting the image.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
The Bible says this about Jesus. Watch this. In the book of Colossians, chapter 1, verses 13 through 15. He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us to the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sin. He is the image of the invisible God.
Yes.
Hebrews 1 and 13 tells us, speaking of Jesus, who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person. He's talking about God. So Jesus was the restoration of the image of God to man. Because remember, after the fall, men started to be reproduced in the image of Adam.
Right.
So the image has more to do not with the physical makeup, but the authority you represent.
Yes.
Because like I said, you couldn't tell the difference between a fallen Adam and an Adam had not fallen physically.
Right.
But there was a great difference between the two.
Yes.
One possessed the image of God, the authority, the right to have dominion in the earth, and the other was a human, a creature.
Right. Right.
Bible talks about Genesis chapter 4, verse number 1. It says when Eve says, I have been given a man, that it was not the word Adam, H120, it to be extant, what's left.
Right.
And then if you look at the definition of that word, it actually tells you it's distinct from the more distinguished H120, which is telling you this is not the same kind of man.
Right.
So Jesus restored this kind of man to us. And then we see that this kind of man has to be taught to those who have become born again in order for us to walk in that image.
Right.
Listen, we have the image, but we have to now walk in it.
Right.
in order for us to defend it.
Yes.
We find this in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse number 8. He says this, but we all with unveiled faces, beholding as in the mirror. That means looking intently as in the mirror. What are we looking at? The glory of the Lord, are being transformed, here it is, into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. So that mirror is the Word of God.
Yes.
We are to look into the Word of God until we are conformed to the same image of God that Christ was conformed to. The Bible says it. We are into the same image. All right. Colossians chapter 3, verse number 9 and 11 says, do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds and have put on the new man, who is renewed in the knowledge. This is why you got to be taught.
Right.
In the knowledge according to the image of him who created him. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 20. Write these down. Ephesians chapter 4. I gave you 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 8. Colossians chapter 3, verses 9 through 11. Now I'm in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 20 through 24. But you have not so learned Christ, if indeed you have heard him, and have been taught by him as truth in Jesus, that you put off concerning the former conduct the old man which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Why? That you may put on the new man.
Yes.
Who's the new man? Which was created according to the image and likeness of God, or according to God. So what we see here is that the primary focus is God is trying to reestablish in the earth his image through Christ. Christ being that very image laid for us and set an example that we are to follow to continue the presence and operation of the image of God in the earth. Why? Because it is the means by which God's order is maintained.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
It is a representation and a reminder to the fallen world.
Yes.
God is still in control.
Yes.
He still has an order and a way of doing things.
That's right.
Yes, yes.
We are not subject to our own imaginations.
Yes.
And then in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, it tells us, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ. What's in that gospel? Who is the image of God.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So now we understand why the church is being attacked.
That's right.
Because we are the voice that instructs the people to equip the believer to be the image, which is the reminder of God's order in this world, that it is not up to it to determine
Indeed.
what it is, but God has already
Indeed.
determined
That's right.
Already to
Yes,
That's right.
indeed.
who and what we are.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
That's right.
Yes.
The world can't afford to have that voice speaking. The world cannot afford for mankind to see the image of God.
Right.
That's right.
The world cannot afford for man to be instructed in the image of God.
Yes.
Because if it does, all of its agendas fold.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yes, indeed.
Every knee bows.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
We listen to me. This is something that is happening now. I'm not talking about something off in the future. I'm talking about right now if the church doesn't speak up.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
right.
We risk losing the ability
That's right.
to carry out our assignment
Yes.
in the world of reminding the world of who and what God is,
That's right.
that we haven't created ourselves.
That's
That's
right.
right.
God has already established these things.
Yes.
There is a right and a wrong.
Yes.
There's an order that God has established,
Yes.
but this order can only be maintained if there is an image in the world that reminds it of the order.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. We hope that you have been edified and encouraged in your pursuit of God's kingdom. You can find out more about J.C. Matthews Ministries by visiting us at jcmatthews.org. If you've been blessed by the message, prayerfully consider partnering with us as we take the gospel of the kingdom to all the world.